Hello, U.S. History, lovely students. Here we are again with another Miss Vinian video. So we are talking about World War I, and we're going to be doing our awesome, extravagant World War I PBL project. So this is our learning target sheet. Today we're going to focus on how do smaller actions lead to larger consequences. So that's your essential question today. And we're also going to cover 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and that's probably it for today. We'll see what time lends us, okay? So let's go to the PowerPoint and let's get to business. So your central question, how do small actions create larger consequences? This is our overall theme, and for our World War I project, that is the question that we are trying to answer. How do all these small events lead to these huge catastrophic consequences, okay? So, story time. Alright, so once upon a time, there was a lad named Franz Ferdinand, and he was the future leader of Austria-Hungary. Well, 6 years prior to this, Austria-Hungary had taken over Bosnia, and many Bosnians and Serbians who lived in Bosnia were angry. So the Archduke of Austria-Hungary visits Bosnia, and while he's there, a Serbian kills him, and the guy's name is Gavrilo Princip. He was part of a terrorist group that actually was planning to kill Archduke Ferdinand, and actually Gavrilo Princip was not the person who was supposed to assassinate Archduke Ferdinand, but he saw him standing out there, and so he just figured he would be the one to assassinate him. And he was outside of a sandwich shop, because everybody gets hungry, even assassins, and he killed the Archduke, okay? So this is the Archduke right before that occurred. Sad. And this is after, causes chaos, all kinds of things happen. So we have what we call the spark, okay? So what happens at this time? And from our class lesson, we have talked about the differences. Well, if you're in 7th period, we've already talked about it. If you're not in 7th period, you're in 2nd and 4th, we haven't gone over the 4 main causes. But as you can see here, everyone has allied. So the first thing that happens is Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. And because Russia is friends with Serbia, Russia says, hey, yo, I'm going to declare war on Austria-Hungary because you don't mess with my people like that. Then Germany declares war on Russia. So France gets in on the action, and France is like, hey, Russia is my pal, so France declares war on Austria-Hungary and Germany. And then Germany says, hey, you can't declare war on us without us declaring war on you. So, of course, Germany declares war on France. And then finally, old Great Britain was sitting there drinking their tea and decided that basically they're going to declare war on Germany and Austria-Hungary. So what we have here is one of the main problems is alliances. Okay, all of these countries were allied together for reasons over imperialism and just other reasons over land and resources. And because of all of these alliances that have built up, when one country fought another country, then all of the countries started fighting each other. So this is kind of how it gets broken down. Okay, so let's go through the teaming. So on the Ally side, we have Russia, France, Great Britain, the United Kingdom, Italy. Now, Italy only joins the Allies in 1915, 1 year after the war started, because they were on the side of the Central Powers, but they flip-flopped when Germany invaded them. Serbia is an ally. This is where it all began, with the Serbian. And then the U.S. joins in 1917. The U.S. tries to remain neutral, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. They end up joining the Allies in 1917. You'll look at these countries and see that they are very familiar if you've learned about World War II. World War I and World War II, a lot of the countries were on the same side, except Italy will be part of, we call them the flip-flop, they will be on the side of the Central Powers in World War II. So what countries changed sides after the war? We already said it was Italy. Okay. So on the Central Powers, starting lineup, Germany, and then we had Austria-Hungary. Okay, because Austria-Hungary, their Archduke is the one that was assassinated. So they're the ones who declare war first. Then we have Turkey, which is known as the Ottoman Empire back then. Woo, sorry. And those are the 3 major countries. Okay. Neutral countries, the United States. Is neutral only for 3 years. They come in for the last year. Sweden, good old Switzerland is always neutral. Spain is neutral in World War I. Sorry, I'm going too fast. And so they will not be neutral in World War II. Okay, but they are neutral in World War I. Okay, so this political cartoon, how does it sum up? This is one that we're going to look at in class, or we've already looked at in class. And basically you can see that this is just a bunch of people that are obviously represent the countries, and one person punches another person, and then all the countries come in. It's just a huge fight, and it could be likened to a fight in a cafeteria on a Friday when someone throws a bottle, boop, and then they get hit in the head, and then their friends come in after them. It's kind of like that with World War I. It's just a spiraling effect. It's a domino effect. One thing happens, and then because they've already built up these alliances, then it becomes this world war. Okay, so why does the United States decide, hey, we're going to remain neutral? Well, our good old trusty President Woodrow Wilson, who made it possible for women to have the right to vote, go Woodrow, said that we're going to remain neutral because if you remember, his diplomacy was moral diplomacy. So he did not want to get involved with other countries unless they needed help. This is also going to protect international trading rights because if we get involved with one country, then that blocks us out from trading with other countries. Okay, because if you side with one country, then you can't trade with the others. In 1916, he was reelected because the slogan they used was, he kept us out of war, which is interesting because in 1917 they're going to go to war. But if you think of presidential campaign slogan, like Barack Obama's was, yes, we can, or about a change. And so, like, a slogan really does help people, if you have the correct slogan, get elected. The only interesting fact to keep in mind here is even though we're neutral, we have loaned money, the banks have loaned money to the Allies for weapons, so $2 billion to be exact. So if you think about it, does that make us neutral? Not necessarily, okay? So America, even though they're neutral, still kind of playing the sides, okay? Also, sorry, I wanted to talk about this. Many Americans were very supportive of the Germans because we had a very large German immigrant population. Now, when I say many, I mean like it's still a small population. But most Americans were split because a lot of people had come from other places, like were immigrants, and they came over, and now they're on America's side, but they're old countries they're fighting against. So they were split. So what happens is, basically, the big countries want United States to pick because if America picks a side, then that side will get more resources. So what happens is we have the British blockade. So basically the U.S. cannot get in to exchange with Germany. And then the Germans bring up their old U-boats, okay, which are submarines, and they engage in submarine warfare. Germans were the leaders of the U-boat. So basically the Germans said, if you come in this area, we will shoot you down. So a British liner, which in 1915 was going through the waters that Germany had said, don't come through or we'll shoot you down, and they shot down the Lusitania. Why did they shoot ships down? They shot them because Allied ships, they thought that they were carrying, even though they were passenger ships, they thought they were carrying weapons to the other side. Then we have a couple other ships that fall, and then basically the United States has economic ties with Britain and France, and we're trading with them, and we're financing their war. So you can see here that we're not technically neutral. We are neutral, we say we are, but we are funding the Allied powers. Okay, so how do Americans get involved? So the first thing is that the reports, I'm not really sure what that noise is coming from the computer. Sorry. Okay, so reports of German cruelty in Belgium. Basically, the biggest thing that is going to shift U.S. opinion is propaganda. And that's why we're going to focus on that in our project. So people had their loyalties to where they had come from before, and then people who were born in America favor Britain and France because Britain and France are some of the nations, or the nations that started America. And then they're putting out British war propaganda. So showing the British in a good light and showing the Germans in a bad light. And there's a lot of politicians out there that are very pro-war. Teddy Roosevelt, was very pro-war. We know that he was, gunboat diplomacy, so he's all over this, okay? The other thing is that they were show up these posters like "Remember Belgium," and to buy war bonds. War bonds help support the war, and so this would be a way that they get people on their side for the war. Okay, so slowly, at first Americans are very isolationist, and they say, we do not want to be involved in this war. And then once propaganda starts creeping in, and then the Lusitania gets sunk, and we're spending money with the Allies, people start feeling like, hey, maybe we should get involved, okay? Here's some propaganda, beat back the Huns with Liberty Bonds, and a lot of these were from Great Britain, but you could also see them in America. Now, so the U.S. doesn't want to be involved, but they start getting prepared for the war. So what they're going to do is start spending more money on military spending, which is just basically building up their weaponry and building up their military. Some people in the Midwest and Western Americans, opposed to preparing for war. These people are socialists, progressives, populists, all those famous people that we've kind of already talked about. And then here's an image of propaganda. Wake up, America. Civilization calls every man, woman, and child. So just trying to show that, like, everybody's involved in this war effort. Okay, so this is a reading that we will do in class. So give me a second. Okay, so in the election of 1916, we saw that Wilson ran on the slogan, "He kept us out of war." But peace efforts failed, and in 1917, Wilson had to ask for a declaration of war. So we want to go over the 2 reasons why. Reason number 1, German U-boats. Okay, so the Germans sank Lusitania, which we talked about. They killed 1,200 civilians, and 128 Americans were on that ship. That was a British ship, and it was just a passenger cruise liner. But they thought that the German boats said nobody can come in our waters because they don't know who is bringing resources to the Allied effort. This angered Americans very much so, and that's going to be one reason why they joined. So that's a U-boat. Sorry, going fast. And then this is what the Lusitania looked like. It was basically like the Titanic. Okay. Other reasons, anti-German propaganda. So this is going to cause Americans to dislike Germany. Here's 2 of my favorite propaganda pictures. It shows, like, basically that's supposed to be the Germans, like, drinking blood, which is not accurate. And then the Iron Cross is basically like our Red Cross, but they're showing the Red Cross or the Iron Cross. Wounded and prisoner, our soldier cries for water. The German sister pours it on the ground before his eyes. There's no woman in Britain who would do it. There's no woman in Britain who will forget it. So basically this is calling on women to join the war effort because the nurses in Germany are obviously not good nurses, okay, and they're not helping our soldiers. So this is a cry for nurses, which was not true about the Iron Cross. Okay, the last thing, the last reason for us joining the war, the Zimmerman Note. It was written in February 1917. And basically this is a secret offer to Mexico from Germany. So Germany wanted Mexico to attack the United States. And we're going to do this in a little simulation that we'll do in class. Some of you have already done it. But Germany promised Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and all that once belonged to Mexico. So they wrote them a letter. Zimmerman is his name. That's why it's called the Zimmerman Note, people. And they wrote a letter to the president of Mexico and said, hey, if you attack the United States, we're going to give you Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and all that once belonged to Mexico back. Okay? And this is going to push the United States into war. I'm back. Mr. Wall and Aaron Robbie interrupted me. Anyways, this is going to push the U.S. into war, and because this is going to be like the last straw. They're going to say, hey, Germany, you shot down the Lusitania, and now you're trying to make secret promises to Mexico, and really, the Allies were already tied up in the war effort. So this is going to be when America joins the war. Okay? And that is it for today. Make sure that you have selected your job, and make sure you have your Unit 3 definitions in process or completed. And I'll see you guys next class. Bye.